Welcome to Cordkillers Reckoning, a very serious show about the world of entertainment that has been turned upside down, and we are just trying to find out how to watch what we want, where we want, whenever we want. I'm Tom Merritt. Brian, where's the good stuff?
That's right, Tom. Here I am in the middle of the good stuff. It's everywhere. So much good. I've never been... They don't prepare you for this in journalism school. I'm sorry. Our feed is getting a bit uppy with the...
Brian, can you compare it to an AM PM? Is it in fact too much good stuff?
Is that their slogan?
Yeah, that's their slogan.
Are we? Yeah, we immediately steer into the skid. It's like Circle K versus 7-Eleven versus AM PM versus Sheets. You know about the Sheets versus Buc-ee's divide, right?
Oh yeah, where is that though? Because
that's north-south. Like everybody loves Sheets for being the grossly oversized truck stop place, I think north of the Mason-Dixon, basically. Okay. And then Buc-ee's owns the South, especially along I-10.
I'm from Love's country, so I don't have a dog in the Sheets fight. But yeah, I am aware. I just couldn't remember which one went with which region.
Apparently, I know way too much about truck stops.
I love Love's. Love's is great.
Yeah, Love's is good. I remember... when I was young, I would go to Flying J's specifically because my dad worked for Conoco and they had Conoco gas.
Okay. And we had a Skelly's in Greenville before Love's.
What is Skelly's?
That's like a 70s truck stop place. And that our Skelly's was where the Madden Football Hall of Fame was. One year because he drove everywhere and took trains. He would name a truck stop to be his Madden Hall of Fame once a year.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. All right, folks, let's get to the supply run.
Supply run.
Where's the meat? Listen, folks, we like to tell you stories, and those stories are true and also help you prepare for the future. And we've been telling you a story about how cable wants to be your platform manager. They want you to pay them. They'll manage getting you all the streaming services. And that's the future of cable. That's what we've been talking about a lot recently. Well, someone's coming for their lunch, that very tiny lunch. It's like not even half a PB&J, but Amazon wants to eat it. Amazon announced it will sell Apple TV Plus as an add-on to its Amazon Prime Video feature. And if you're unaware, Amazon has more than 100 add-on channels. You can get Max, you can get Paramount Plus, and pretty soon you're going to get Apple TV Plus. That leaves, by my count, Netflix, Disney Plus, and Peacock as the only major streaming platforms that you can't get through Prime Video, which puts it up against a lot of those cable providers as far as what streaming services they have available. This is another move in that continuing development of platforms managing your subscriptions. To that end, it's worth noting that DirecTV, which is in the process of merging with Dish next year, has said it wants to be the place people go to pay for all their streaming services in one place. And it now has announced it's launching a FAST service, a free ad-supported TV service called My Free DirecTV, starting on November 15th, so just over a month from this recording in the U.S., I assume DirecTV wants to lure you into the tent with the FAST service. That tends to be what folks do with these sorts of things, and then become the one place where you pay for all your streaming services. But let's get back to that big news that Apple is letting Amazon sell Apple TV Plus.
Yes. Okay. Oh man. There are many different angles, but let's start with this one. Disclosure. I'm already in the Amazon ecosystem, and it is shockingly easy to add and turn on and turn off channels. I think I'm up to like 6 times that I've subscribed, air quotes, I've purchased. I flipped a switch for AMC. Since all my subscriptions are in one place, it's easy to get to them. And I seem to remember that it's easy to check up on like, what am I currently subscribed to? And then undo it. Yeah. So this is just amazing news. You said Amazon, Disney, and what else?
It's Netflix, Disney Plus, and Peacock are not available as Prime Video add-ons yet. There are other services out there that are also not available, but of the big major ones, Disney Plus definitely wants to be a platform of its own, right? So I get that. Netflix always plays outside the tent. It doesn't like to integrate with anybody, so I wouldn't expect them to do this, although they have played with the cable companies and the telcos, letting you get Netflix through them. So that will be an interesting wrinkle to watch. Peacock, on the other hand, I think it's just a matter of time before it enters this, because it also is available on some of the cable streaming situations. I would put money that Peacock is the next of these three to get added to Amazon Prime Video.
I agree with that. However, I really had the impression that Peacock is gussying itself up for sale.
Really? Why do you say that? It's Comcast. Comcast ain't going to sell it.
Oh, sorry. You know what? I rescind that. I was confusing it with Paramount.
Paramount, which is definitely not for sale. How much would you like to pay, though? Just out of curiosity.
That's right.
Yeah.
They keep flashing their knees at us.
They have the card table on their lawn and a price tag hanging off of it, and like, oh no, this isn't a garage sale. But since you're curious,
well, like, we're just short on storage.
Oh yeah, no, we're just cleaning out the garage. But are you interested? Yeah.
So I got to tell you, this does not feel like a cable-y thing, because as we get closer to the reimagining of cable, I'm constantly evaluating what was it we hated so much about cable, and in general, it was the locked-in, rigid. It was contracts locked in, poor customer service, inability to extricate yourself. And none of those apply to Amazon. So I'm having a hard time. Tom, I pride myself on trying real hard to find something negative on most of these stories, but I'm not seeing it here.
The difference between what Amazon's doing and what the cable networks and telcos are shaping up to do is Amazon lets you add them on and pay extra. So you're going to be adding on Apple TV Plus for $4.99 a month or $9.99 a month or whatever the price is, right? Whereas cable is trying to say one price will give you all the streaming services. So Amazon is still giving you choice. You just have to budget for yourself. It's not one price, all you can eat. Cable is trying to do the all you can eat, but will decide what services are available.
Yeah. Okay, that tracks. This is a minor thing. I'll be really curious to see, as we've talked about, I get really annoyed with the desktop web browser Apple TV Plus experience. That is a problem that is shared by exactly nobody on the planet, as best I can tell.
Yeah.
But please just let that be better through Amazon.
Well, you will. Do you like the Amazon desktop?
I do very much.
If you get rid of your Apple TV Plus subscription that you have now and instead get it through Amazon, suddenly you will have the Amazon experience for all the Apple TV shows. The other thing that people are pointing out is if you watch Prime Video on Android, there is no Apple TV Plus app on Android. You have to go to that web experience if you want to watch Apple TV Plus on Android. So this will be a backdoor to Apple TV Plus for appearing for Android users as well.
Yeah, I got to tell you, everything about this sounds amazing.
Now to the last bit that I don't think is going to happen, but I want to happen very much. We didn't mention that Apple TV Plus is also a platform that you can add channels on. That's actually how I get Paramount Plus. I have Paramount Plus Showtime added to my Apple TV Plus subscription. Apple TV Plus coming to Amazon it won't, but it could say, oh, well, if you've added subscriptions through Apple TV Plus, they would now come to Amazon. And what I desperately want to happen, even though that itself is probably not going to happen, the Apple TV Plus you get through Prime Video is going to just be Apple TV Plus. But let's say it wasn't. I want Prime Video to be something you can add to Apple TV Plus too.
I mean, already, I believe you can use the Apple TV Plus hardware to open an Amazon app to subscribe to Apple TV Plus.
You could use Apple TV to go to Amazon Prime Video and watch Apple TV Plus in the Prime Video app. And then I really wish you could then add Prime Video to your Apple TV Plus subscription and then, turtles all the way down. But It is it's a move for Apple towards that pivot to services. Apple TV Plus has heretofore sort of been a bit of a loss leader for both prestige and getting people to want to pay for the Apple One subscription. Apple Music is usually something people want. iCloud is definitely something people want. And Apple One gives you both of those and a bunch of other things for one low price, Apple TV Plus being one of those things. So this is the first time they've really made a deal where Apple TV Plus is not just trying to be something that brings you into the Apple world. It is, in fact, trying to make some revenue through Amazon Prime Video because it's not connected to the Apple world in any other way.
Yeah. I guess, does this take any of the shine off of Apple TV Plus? Because I know that when they introduced the service, it was basically they were riding on the coattails of their excellent products. But now I think the programming stands on its own, and I think if anything, it raises the prestige of Apple TV Plus as a service.
I wonder, right? Because you could see it both ways. That is a perfectly legitimate way to look at it. You could also look at it as, oh, Apple is a thing you add on to Amazon. Amazon's the real thing, and all these others are just, lesser things that ride on it, like those things that ride on moray eels, whose name I can't remember.
Well, I think you're thinking of remoras that attach themselves to sharks.
There you go. Sorry, moray eels, for bringing you into this conversation for no reason. Remoras. Thank you. That's what I was trying to think of. So is Apple a remora, or is it swimming with the sharks?
I would be really surprised if anybody values the Amazon name in terms of their premium repackaging of stuff. Like when I picture Amazon, full stop, I picture brown boxes, giant warehouse, and low prices, excellent logistics. And whether it's delivering me videos or websites or products, like they are as frictionless as possible for the consumer. And if they could be invisible, they would. Yeah. And so as a result, I don't think there's any like, ooh la la on Amazon, are we? I think, I'm not feeling that.
Please let there be a follow-up story where Apple TV Plus is selling Prime Video on Apple TV's platform. That would, as an add-on to Apple TV Plus.
I mean, that would just save them a lap.
It would. I mean, it would make as much sense to me, right? Because Amazon's certainly getting the benefit of being able to say, "Oh, that Apple TV show Severance, you could watch that on Prime Video." And you just click here and then we'll add the Apple TV subscription. But that's the way a Prime Video usually does it. It just shows up in the search results. You click on it like, it's available. You just got to click here to agree to subscribe to Shudder, and then you can watch whatever it is. Or
let me double check this. I am like, none of them are available for purchase, right? I remember there was a time I wanted to buy all of this stuff.
Well, yeah, like, Amazon does that too. They mix those things in. And I know some of the Apple TV Plus shows have been available as digital purchases in the past. So if they were, I wouldn't be shocked that Amazon had them available that way too. But I'm not sure what
in
is
this case, I'm seeing just Ted Lasso merch. I'm seeing the Blu-ray. I'm seeing just a bunch of
you're just seeing the
stuff.
General retail results. Yeah, interesting. Well, that will change. Now it'll be like, watch Ted Lasso. Just click here and pay the extra money. We do not charge you extra money at our Patreon.
No, in fact, we don't charge you anything at all.
Not a bit.
We, however, will humbly accept any donations. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh,
Tom,
did they want to give something to us? Yeah.
Tom, sure. Technically, wouldn't all of our patrons be tipping us? And shouldn't there be no taxes on tips? Do we suddenly have a dog in the political fight?
The two leading presidential candidates have promised not to tax tips. I believe Patreon is tips. from now on.
You know what? But it's not for us to decide, Tom. Here, I say let the people decide. Let them vote. If you believe it is a tip, then increase your patronage by $1 at patreon.com/Cordkillers. If you believe it's not a tip and it should be paying taxes on, show it by increasing your patronage by $2 at patreon.com/Cordkillers. You'll get early access to the full experience and, of course, exclusive access to our After Talk segment where we have where we are increasingly talking about all the cool stuff that we're watching, the return of Spoiler in Time. It's all inside the After Talk, and this will be an interesting one because, Tom, spoiler alert for After Talk, exclusive for patrons. I'm not entirely sure I finished Only Murders in the Building or remember how it ended.
So you watched it?
I definitely know I started it.
Uh-huh.
We'll find out. What we'll do in the After Talk is you're going to walk me through it, and at some point I'm going to keep on saying, yeah, no, I remember that, and then I'll have opinions on it. And then at some point, maybe we'll get to the end. I'll be like, oh, I guess I do remember it.
That unfortunately is how I feel about every episode of television I ever watch until we start talking about it. So this will be interesting.
Maybe it's good that I come in spitting fire fresh off of having watched something.
All right, let's move on to the search party. Ten days from this very moment, we will be watching a new episode of the last season of Star Trek Lower Decks, Brian.
I'm not ready to let it go. It didn't, I wasn't right enough. I wanted to do 13 seasons and eventually see them all become starship captains that are still best friends.
6 movies.
Well, and I think I speculated wildly, suggesting that, if this is the end, then almost certainly we're looking at feature films coming up after this.
Well, and they have been dropping hints that, like, this isn't the last you'll see of these characters, even if it's the end of the run for the Lower Decks. So, yeah, something is in the works, whether they're going to show up on other Star Trek shows, or there's going to be a different series, or there's going to be movies or whatever. But the trailer is out if you want to get tiny spoiled, as I just decided to call watching a trailer. And it's a fun conceit in this trailer where, the captain is talking about how wonderful everything is going and how unusually competent everyone's being, while you're seeing scenes from the future season that contradict that. And the one thing I will spoil for you, and I don't care, is there are an endless number of Harry Kims showing up at some point.
Yes, there are. Can I share something that I realized for the very first time? This trailer, like many animated trailers, especially for comedies, has so many moments that just fall flat in the trailer. And it's just, they're unfunny. You could tell there's supposed to be a funny moment. It's not funny. And then I was like, I'm all in. I love Lower Decks and I know it's good. I'm like, well, then why is this bad? And then it hit me, it's bad because Lower Decks has so many layers and nuance that you can't possibly convey the real funny things. Somebody who has to cut up this trailer is like, you got to find something slapsticky that you can not know what a Lower Decks is and cut this together, and people will at least grasp that this is a comedy show. And so they grab all the lowest hanging fruit. They're like, that looks like a joke to me, I guess, that you can tell, set up punchline in a second and a half. And as a result, you get bad stuff. And if anything, it conveys to me just what an excellent show it is, because if we love it this much, there must be more going on than, person gets hit in the crotch.
Would it surprise you to know that is not the reaction I had to this trailer?
Oh, really? Tell me about it.
I'm a context filler, which means when I see something, I suddenly imagine everything around it that led up to that point.
Oh, you're a solver.
Yeah. Without trying, that happens. I attribute that same personality trait to why I can't not overhear conversations near me in a restaurant. I will often just start laughing when we're eating out, and Eileen's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I can't tell you because I'm eavesdropping, but I can't help it because I just hear things. Same thing here. When I saw all those little individual things, I just filled in like, oh, I bet this leads to that, leads to this, leads to that scene. I don't know that made me think they were funny, but it made me not think it was bad, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess. And meanwhile, I was watching it as its own unique 2-minute long vignette, and it didn't stand in that regard.
Yeah, and I could totally see that because it wouldn't.
I know I've mentioned this before, but our friend Andrew Main is also a solver, so much so that when the poster was revealed for Super 8, he squinted at it, picked up his phone, called fellow magician and cinematographer of Super 8, Larry Fong, and just blurted out, "The monster's in the water tower, right?"
That's amazing. By the way, I'm going to take a break from our lineup right now to just tell you, go become a patron of The Political Orphanage with Andrew Heaton, if for no other reason to listen to the bonus episode of Brian and Heaton talking about Fight Club. It is the most delightful bonus episode. I knew what was coming from Brian. I kind of guessed what was coming from Heaton, and I'm like, I may fast forward through this one. We'll see. Listen to every single word of it and even rewound parts of it. Your two very different opinions on that movie, but you two very kindly sharing them with each other is gold. It was such a good episode.
That is awesome to hear, because we recorded that a couple, 2-3 months ago, I think. And to be honest, like I was talking to Heaton, and neither one of us really remembered much about the conversation, but we knew we loved it at the time.
Yeah.
And so he's like, "Yeah, I read it for the patrons. Lot of feedback on this one."
Yeah, I imagine so, because you both have very definitive opinions that are very different, and have really nuanced and justified explanations of why you think the things that you think about them. I found it very fascinating. Really enjoyed it.
Very cool.
So that's story number 2, is go listen to that at The Political Orphanage. Story number 3 is season 2 of Silo is coming to Apple TV Plus on Amazon Prime Video as an add-on November 15th. It's 10 episode long season coming out. I don't know how many we're getting at the top. Sometimes you get 2 at the top, but after it gets underway, it'll be 1 per week. And we are seeing what happens when Rebecca Ferguson's character leaves the silo.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this. Part of the reason I loved Silo is because I knew Fallout was coming. And during the time we were watching it, I mentioned to you that this is as close to a Vault show as we're going to get, because I was, to be honest, quite terrified that Fallout would not be good. Turns out Fallout is very good, and we get not only lots of their Vault, but other Vaults, and I was so curious how Fallout was going to stick the landing after Silo was so good. And now I'm curious, well, how are you gonna pull this off, Silo? Now that you're outside in the wastes, what do you got?
What do you got left there, Silo? And I know that I read the book, and therefore somewhere the answer to what happens passed through my brain. But
We talked about this because both of us were flummoxed by the blind spot that we had for, well, we know we read this, but what does it mean? And then one of the listeners wrote us at cordkillers@gmail.com and reassured us that we weren't insane. It's just that the book being a young adult novel, most of what we're seeing in the series is paid to about as much attention as a teenager going through a hard time would dedicate it.
Yeah. But very excited for season 2 of Silo. I can't wait to watch that. Again, November 15th. Netflix announced on X that John Mulaney will host a new live variety talk show on Netflix sometime next year. They wrote, "That's it. That's all we know." So it sounds like what day, what time of day it will go live. Anything else about the format is daily, weekly. That is all still yet to be decided, or certainly yet to be announced. But here's another Netflix going into live, Brian, doing a talk show, which viewers have been moving away from watching.
Well, but also one thing that we've seen consistently is we've seen Netflix play to their strengths on all of their live stuff. They're steering away from super high stakes stuff. You know, like we had some stuff from the realm of reality television. Closest thing they got to a Super Bowl kind of moment was the Chris Rock special. But even then, they had been cutting their teeth on comedy specials for a long time. And It was a live performance, so there's flexibility here. And even now, with this being John Mulaney and variety artists or whatever, a variety show, it to be honest, might bring back the most sought after ingredient of your Saturday Night Lives, your Tonight Shows, your late shows, and so on, which is actually being live, actually being a high wire act where something could go terribly wrong.
Yeah, it's not that Netflix hasn't done talk shows before. They've done several. Chelsea Handler was, I think, the first one that I can think of that lasted for a while, but it didn't really take off. So adding that live spice to it definitely makes it into something different. John Mulaney, not a member of Saturday Night Live, but he's hosted Saturday Night Live tons of times. He's a stand-up comic. So between those two, he certainly has experience being live. I also think Mulaney would definitely be the person discussed to take over the Tonight Show in a world where the Tonight Show was still a big deal, and let's say Jimmy Fallon was near the end of his term of hosting it, which he's not. But yeah, he's the kind of guy who would be in this conversation. So it's just interesting to see that conversation has now moved to Netflix and live. Yeah, I think I hadn't quite accurately given weight to the fact that this is live. That's a bigger deal than any other. None of the other talk shows are live except for Saturday night.
Well, and the ability to kind of remap a whole experience based on happy accidents is such a hallmark of watching somebody do that live wire act. That I don't know. It'll be good to actually see somebody doing a live variety show without a net. And now, of course, they won't quite have the stakes of, say, a broadcast, golden era show where it's like the FCC, you weren't allowed to say certain words,
and the entire nation is watching.
Right. The numbers won't be there, but it'll be more than this younger generation ever got, for sure.
Well, and it's about time Los Angeles got a talk show. I assume Mulaney's based in Los Angeles. Is he? I don't know. Maybe he's not.
For them. Maybe it'll turn into something. You got it, LA.
Ever since Fallon took the Tonight Show back to New York, LA has just not been the same. So it would be good if this was done in Los Angeles. The Beatles' 1964 trip to America is going to be the subject of a new documentary from Martin Scorsese, who's producing, and David Tedeschi, who is directing. It'll be called Beatles 64, and it's coming to Disney Plus November 29th.
I have to assume that this is going to have a similar level of upscaling and incredible window through reality that we got from the Get Back, right?
Yeah, exactly. Probably not the Peter Jackson level of attention to technology that we got, but certainly, it's going to happen.
Also, hopefully not the Peter Jackson level of pacing, because I definitely didn't make it to the end, and I'm pretty big fan of the Beatles, Tom.
Oh, really? I definitely made it to the end, but yeah, it needed more attention.
But that was the whole point, is that the original release was too chopped up and too cut down.
I actually enjoyed it, even though it was long, because I was still fascinated the whole time.
I loved it, and I made the mistake of loving it so much that I'm like, you know what? I'm enjoying this so much, I want to savor it, and then life happened, and so I haven't made it back.
Have you looked in your shed lately?
No. Why?
There might be a classic British television show in there, because that's where they are. They're in sheds. Previously unseen footage from the classic British TV show Thunderbirds was found in a garden shed and has now been mostly restored. And they'll be showing these episodes that have not been seen since they aired next year.
What, do you happen to know if this was on magnetic media or
it's
film?
On film. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. I remember one of our early stories was about like just random episodes of Doctor Who from back when they would just reuse those tapes and just record them over.
They're usually found in garden sheds. Unfortunately, your garden shed's not in England, so it's probably not there, or even anywhere in the British Isles. Occasionally, they're found in Australia, though. So Texas is the Australia of the North America, right?
That's true. That's true.
So there's hope. Severance's first season will be making its way to more living rooms. The Blu-ray is coming out December 17th, only in 1080p, which is what Blu-ray was created to serve. But Blu-ray can also handle 4K. You're not getting that. You're getting 1080p. But you'll be able to buy it on Blu-ray and watch all of it in advance of season 2 coming to Apple TV Plus January 17th.
Man, if it's yet another excuse to go back and re-experience Severance for a third time, I am in. Again, our sci-fi friend Andrew Main said that he is such a fan of any story that says, if this is true, what else is true? And nothing embodies it like Severance. It starts off with a premise, and you think, if this is true, then what else is true? And by the end, you're like, yep, that tracks. That all should be true. It's great.
I should have put this up after the John Mulaney story, but Deion Sanders is going to host a talk show for Tubi called We Got Time Today. 20 weekly hour-long episodes, not live, but they will be released on Tuesdays.
Sports. Yep.
That's right. Deion Sanders played and coaches sports.
Football, right? Football.
Yeah. Yes, the footballs. The U.S. football, not the rest of the world.
Not the real football.
Amazon MGM Studios global head Jennifer Salk recently gave an update on the James Bond franchise. Remember, James Bond franchise is contracted to MGM. Amazon bought MGM, so they own Bond. And when Amazon bought MGM, there was a lot of talk about that. There has not been a Bond film since Amazon bought MGM. Salk said, there are a lot of ideas that have popped up that I thought are interesting. I think there are a lot of different ways we can go. We have a good and close relationship with Eon and Barbara, the Broccolis who own the franchise, and Michael. We are not looking to disrupt the way those wonderful films are made. For us, we are taking their lead, which is a weird way of phrasing that they're letting them make the decisions. The global audience will be patient. We don't want too much time between films, but we are not concerned at this point.
Reading the tea leaves, it sounds to me like they actually have some really brilliant pitches, and I would imagine that's everything from TV shows,
maybe
gritty reboots is a cliche.
I mean, James Bond is always a gritty reboot every time, right? Every time you change actors, you restart the story.
Every time they're all like, no, this time it's going to age well. I promise. It won't be a hilarious laughing stock.
Ever think this is misogynist?
This time, Brian's daughter won't be confused about which one is the parody, but I'm looking at you, Austin Powers, and man with the whatever.
Yeah. It does sound too like they're not even talking casting. Like they are trying to figure out what the idea is, and then they're going to go cast the person, which is also how you should do it.
Well, and starting with a good high concept, like something that nobody sees coming, could be a total game changer. And something as important, although this would be too cliche, what if Bond was a girl or whatever, like that kind of what if blank, if you come out with the right idea at the right moment, it's pure electricity. So it sounds to me like they're unworried.
Could you get away with doing an entire Bond movie where you don't know who Bond is until the end?
Or
like he's
maybe it's
secret
a fake out
agent.
I mean, that's I'd hate to say it. That's what they did with the reboot or the sequels in Star Wars. They faked us out, letting us think that Finn was going to be the next Jedi, and it wasn't.
Right.
That didn't go over real hot.
Those hands were made of pork. It was ham-handed.
Okay, I was like, you mean they got wedged into a congressional bill?
that too. A lot of people don't realize. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the buried treasure.
Okay.
Most people want to know why they suddenly got rich.
Buried treasure.
Mr. Brushwood, what have you been watching lately that you would like to tell the folks about?
Tom, I have entered a new demographic. I did something I've never done in my entire life.
Oh, dear.
Saturday morning at 8:45 a.m.
Super Friends?
I went to a movie theater and watched a biopic about Donald Trump. And as we were going, like...
let's talk Skechers slip-ins while we're...
I did not realize that they were showing movies that early. But then I was like, I kind of want to go see it. And Bonnie was like, yeah, sure, I'm in. And I looked, I'm like, oh, it's in 10 minutes. Let's just go. And I was like, oh my God, I have a feeling there's going to be one target demographic. Tom, 100% of everyone in that movie theater was me and Bonnie.
I see.
No, by which I mean we were the only people in the movie theater
in there. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. No, I get it. What'd you see?
The Apprentice. That's the one, the biopic that tells the story of Donald Trump learning to be Donald Trump from Roy Cohn. Did not learn anything new, but that was not the point of it.
Sure.
They represent Trump an awful lot like the guy that we have seen a lot of. I suspect it's an accurate portrayal. They definitely have all of the receipts. If you read any of the interviews or reviews, they're very aware of potential lawsuits, so they make sure that they have everything on the record of the things that they represent. But it's really not at all about the things that happen. It's about just sitting with the curious character of Donald Trump. And it was utterly fascinating the way in the 1970s seeing the portrayal is excellent. Every day since I saw it, I've liked it more, and I may go see it a second time.
Really? Oh, wow.
Just because the performances are so good. It's got Jeremy Strong, the guy from Succession, as Roy Cohn, and the guy who plays Donald Trump. Like, early on, you look and you're like, hey, it doesn't look much like Trump. But then there are moments later on that I'm like, I can't tell the difference between them. I was so lost in it. There are extended scenes because, I have a trouble turning off production brain. But there's one extended minute, 90-second long scene that's an unbroken shot in which they're dealing with a kid and having an important life conversation between Ivana and Donald Trump. And the longer the scene went on, I realized that the chaos the kid was injecting, kids at that young can't act, so they just have to react around it. And he just radiated this. You could tell that they'd spent a lot of time inhabiting these characters, and it haunted me. It really got into my head because Bonnie and I both, and we didn't expect it to. We liked it well enough. But it just stuck in our head. And I think that it will have that effect no matter where you are on the political spectrum,
Yeah. That's the question a lot of people are going to have is like, oh, so is this pro? Is it anti? And it sounds like it's not meant to be either.
Oh my God. I didn't realize that was the Winter Soldier. That's wonderful.
Sebastian Stan. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, wow. Now I have to go see it again.
That was an excellent pivot away from my question.
I'm sorry. I got distracted. Say it again.
No. It was perfect because I asked a political question.
Oh.
Honestly, it wasn't even really a question. It was like, it sounds like it was not meant to be pro or con necessarily, but just a character stuff.
There were delightful humanizing moments. There were deep, I don't know how I feel about this moment. There were laugh out loud moments. And again, these are not plot driven, but just execution driven. And it does things like in the 70s, very slight. First of all, the whole thing's in 4:3 because Donald Trump is a television era personality.
Right.
So they do classic 4:3 framing the entire time and they don't break it. They do a little bit of the whole 70s stuff is extraordinary with all the cars, props, the locations. And you see, every movie needs to have their protagonist be in a low, relatable position. He's going door to door. Somebody throws a giant tub of boiling water at him because he's psychotic. And it's I don't know. I liked it a lot. I'm going to go see it a second time. Please, if anybody else sees it, you guys tell me whether or not this passes the political sniff test or not, because I think it did.
For balance, will you go and see Chase Oliver's biopic as well?
Yes, I will. And who knows? My vote's still up in the air.
That's the only way the democratic system works. I've been watching a lot of baseball. And one thing that happens in the postseason is having to remember who has what games, right? Because it used to be Fox had everything. And then they expanded the playoffs, and ESPN would have the first round, and then Fox would get the rest. Then Fox gave up some of the playoffs, and it went to TBS. And then TBS is like, well, sometimes it'll be on TNT, and it got really complicated. One thing that's interesting about the postseason for baseball this year is that the TBS and TNT games are on Max. So it actually slightly simplified. Oh, if it's the American League, it's on Max. If it's the National League, it's on Fox. Now, I still have to use two different apps. I can use the Max app for TBS and TNT. I use DirecTV Stream for Fox. And yes, I could use DirecTV Stream for TBS and TNT, and I do sometimes, to be honest. But I found it interesting that I'm like, oh, I don't have to go into DirecTV and then hope it comes up on the suggested and then try to find it in the guide. Like, I can just go to Max and it'll be there at the top. Which makes things quite a bit easier. Granted, it'd be easier even still if I was subscribing to all of these through Amazon Prime Video and they were just all at the top, right? And it was one platform. But it is interesting to see how this stuff works. Also, because I have Max and DirecTV Stream, there have been times when I forgot which one I was watching. And the difference is when Max coverage ends, the game ends, and then it's over. When TBS coverage ends, the game ends, and they toss to fill the rest of the time until the next scheduled thing with post-game analysis. And side note that's not terribly important, but Eileen and I have a running gag for years now to evaluate the ties and suits of Big Papi, Alex Rodriguez, and now Derek Jeter. And I forgot I was watching on Max, and we were about to be like, okay, what are they wearing? And then it went away. And I'm like, oh crap, I guess we have to turn on DirecTV to see it. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah. Just a little interesting cord cutting perspective on watching the baseball playoffs this season. If you got something we should be on the lookout for, email us cordkillers@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Brian, I think it's you this week that gets to tell us about a secret thing.
It is. Oh man. I actually think later this week, you know what? Later this week, just the people who are on my email list are going to find out about, I don't know, what may be traditionally year after year, every holiday season, give or take, I show up with a surprise that I've been working on for a long time. Only people on the email list are going to find out about it. So if I were anybody, I would head on over to gimme.scamstuff.com. That's gimme.scamstuff.com. It'll look like you're signing up for a free giveaway. And you might win. Congratulations. But mainly the value is you'll be on my email list, and so I'll be able to hit you up.
Fantastic. Go do that right now while we scan the horizon.
Send a scanning to abort.
Scanning the horizon!
My friends, we've only got a couple of stories in Scanning the Horizon. The horizon is clear this week. Forbes reports that viewership may not have been the only or even the main reason that Disney did not renew The Acolyte for future seasons. Reportedly, the series spent $230.1 million. That's roughly $28.7 million per episode before post-production was done. The original budget for the series was reported to be $180 million. Merchandising sales were also disappointing. So I don't think Forbes is trying to say there was no connection to viewership, but it definitely was a combination of high expense, low viewership.
Well, and also, it may have been if you're going to course correct, like if you're going to double down on this and create a franchise, if you're going to spend the cultural capital with your fandom to say, no, give it a chance, stick with it, we're going to pay it off or whatever, then you really are beholden or you sever that trust with them. So the question was like, do we want to, at this burn rate of cash, take a gamble on something that may not really pay off, or at least obligate us for a decade in this direction. And it's like, ugh.
And I think, the other perspective on it too could be if they had stuck to $180 million budget and the viewership was the same, they might have done another season. it's not a guarantee, but they might have looked at it and said, well, we have enough. Let's keep bringing them back and see if we can rehabilitate, maybe make some tweaks and bring more people in. But at $230 million, it just, it crossed a line somewhere where they're like, the gap between number of people who will come back and watch and dollars spent is just too big.
Well, and if they had a smash hit out of the gates, and let's say the smash hit was largely related to one character's performance or the lovability of a character, then you have the flexibility to what if we spent half as much and made it more focused on this character that's clearly beloved, and then we don't have to do quite the spectacle. But my guess is that just, they especially we don't know what other opportunities they're chasing internally as well.
Yeah. Now, granted, every show needs to make, needs to have as much viewership as possible, and needs to justify its cost. The other thing that could play in here, and you tell me how much you think this plays into it, is if you go over budget by that much, $50 million, does Disney say, we don't trust you to do another season? Is that play into it of well, we do another season, but you're going to go over budget again. So whatever budget we give you, you're going to spend even more, and we can't afford that.
Well, and this is all being produced in-house. So it's not even like it's a third party that's like, hey, we can send it to you as is, or we can make it good for this much more.
I mean, $50 million over budget doesn't seem like that much in some respects, but it's TV, not movies. So maybe that's the difference.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the cheddar.
You've got mail.
I actually really love the balance. I know we only had one thing in Scanning the Horizon this week, but we have so much good email here. Thank you, Matt, who wrote in and said, hey, Tom and Brian, I'm still catching up with episodes. I just listened to 518, where you mentioned Time Bandits had been canceled after one season. It sounded like neither of you would bother watching. Don't make that mistake. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I'd recommend giving it a try. The first episode will tell you whether you like the style of humor, fun stories, and decent effects, which must have cost a fortune. My family certainly enjoyed watching it together, and it's a shame there won't be a series 2. Give it a try. I'd be interested to hear what you both think. Many thanks, Matt.
You know what? That is exactly the nudge I needed, because like I said, I was waiting for literally one person to tell me to go see it. Matt, thank you. You are the one person who told me to go see it.
You are the one, Matt.
If only I had Apple TV Plus, though. Anyone know where I could get it?
Well, Brian, no idea. It definitely shoves it up in the order for me. I still have way less time than I have ability to watch things. So I'm not guaranteeing I'll get around to it soon, but it helps. It is, I know, it's just one person, and maybe that's not the way it should work, but that's the way human brains work. Aaron says, I'm a patron, but email is much easier than navigating that terrible Patreon app. That's also why we have email.
Also, we vastly prefer emails from everybody. It's very easy.
I don't have a problem with you guys doing full experience for shows already covered with spoiler in time, but I think what would really add to it is if you also played excerpts from the old spoiler in time episodes you covered, those specific episodes of the show. You would definitely want to do it after you talked about the show. Maybe Amos just pulls out the highlights so you don't have to retread the entire spoiler in time coverage. Also, please do Sports Night. Most people think of Aaron Sorkin as a writer of political shows, but I think where he shines best is writing shows about shows like Sports Night and Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip. Thank you, Aaron.
I love the idea of Tom-on-Tom violence, of hearing your previous thoughts from a decade ago. And
we could just do a whole show where I yell at myself for what I thought 10 years ago. Yeah,
it's called Inside My Heart.
I don't know that we want it in the full experience necessarily, but that could definitely be a bonus
or an after talk.
Yeah, after talk kind of thing, right? I like that. It's certainly an easier said than done kind of situation. So, but I like the idea. What do you think of Sports Night?
You know what? I saw the chatter about Sports Night at the time. I knew that it was vaguely an ESPN-like Sports Center themed show. Aaron Sorkin, we've seen him really shine in The West Wing. I was not a fan of what he was doing with the newsroom. I'd be interested to see how this one lands.
It would be going back to a second Aaron Sorkin, which feels a little bit like, All right. Scott writes, your discussion where Tom recommended a set-top box for Brian got me thinking. I have an LG and have been using some of the apps to stream from that for the last several years, but it's starting to get a little slow, and some functions require many button presses to finally respond. So I, for one, would be interested in a discussion of what devices you think are worth recommending. Perhaps most importantly, a broad overview of your opinions of why the device may be good for a certain type of viewer. Thanks for the show, Scott.
You know, we used to cover the hardware updates back when, you know, having hardware for this kind of stuff was novel. We would cover it every single week, but we've slowed that down because we didn't want to retread, you know, now with more zeros again and again. However, it does feel like once a year we should do a push. Maybe we can figure a slow news week and we could do a roundup of our latest opinions. But the broad strokes, and tell me if you disagree on this, Tom, is that there's really kind of two tiers. If you just want something over nothing, they're you know, you're not going to be, it's not going to be disastrous to do any of the $20 to $40 sticks or dongles or what have you. And then the other tier, I mean, to be honest, it's kind of hard. Well, I'll save it.
I think I know where you're going, and I'm with you. There's form factor, ecosystem, and price, right? So do you want a dongle? Do you want a set-top box? Do you live in the Amazon world like Brian does? Do you live in the Apple world? Do you live in the Android world? Then you got other options. And then how much are you willing to spend, right? Which could knock you back into another form factor if you really want to save the most money. But I feel like that's kind of the approach, is like asking any given person, like, well, how do you watch most of your TV? What are the apps you use the most? And then going from there.
You know what we could actually fold into along with the hardware, because the ecosystem matters so much as well. We could sort of evaluate the different flavors from the different devices.
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, Matt says, hello, Tom and Brian. I would like to suggest you consider news radio for the full experience. However, there are some issues with news radio where I believe it may warrant some exceptions to the rules of the full experience. Please allow me to explain. According to the full experience rules, the only episode to have Phil Hartman in news radio would be the pilot. That is, and he explained this, and I took it out, but the highest rated episode is the one where they were dealing with Phil Hartman's death. So he's not in that. Of course, he's not in the last episode, and the lowest rated episode also took place after he died. So he's only going to be in the pilot on the full experience. The pilot is not the best way to experience the 4 years of Phil Hartman on news radio. I suggest a Phil Hartman rule for the full experience. Every so often, you will give us another episode just because Phil Hartman deserves a little more respect than most. Or, one other idea, give us the full Phil Hartman news radio experience.
Oh, we could decide the show was dead the moment he was.
Yeah, this would be the full episodes only from when Phil was alive. Thank you both for doing what you do. Respectfully submitted, Matt.
That's pretty good. So many thoughts and ideas that I want to discuss. We're going to save all of it for After Talk behind the Patreon.
Yeah, definitely. But thank you, Matt. Good suggestion. I'm very interested to talk about that. And that's going to do it for us. Thanks, everybody, for supporting us on that very same Patreon. Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. And we are live, if you want to watch us, Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/Night Attack. I reckon we'll talk to you again next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.